I'm Charlie Saunier from the Renegades of Puck, and this is the 20th Century Hockey Chronicle. The two-time defending champion Toronto Maple Leafs begin the season without Sil Apps and Nick Metz, who have retired. In a game between Montreal and Toronto, Habs defenseman Ken Reardon and Toronto center Cal Gardner engage in a vicious stick fight. Conn Smythe, owner of the Leafs, sends coach Hap Day to Montreal to buy Maurice Richard. Day comes up empty. The Red Wings, boasting the production line of Ted Lindsay, Sid Abel, and Gordie Howe, win the regular season title with a record of 34-19-7. Powered by the line of Kenny Smith, Paul Ronty, and Johnny Pearson, 62 goals and 132 points, the Bruins finish in second place, 9 points behind Detroit. Montreal's Bill Durnan leads the league in goals against average, 2.10, and shutouts, 10, as the Habs finish in third. Coach Charlie Conacher can't get Chicago into the playoffs. The Blackhawks finish in fifth place out of the playoffs for the third straight year. Roy Conacher, the Hawks' superb left winger, wins the NHL scoring title with 68 points, beating linemate Doug Bentley by 2 points. Chicago's Doug Bentley wins the league assist title with 43, one more than linemate Roy Conacher. Sid Abel, Detroit's ace playmaker, surprises a few people when he leads the league in goals with 28 and ties for third in points with 54. Scottish-born Jimmy Conacher traded from Detroit to Chicago ties teammate Roy Conacher and Toronto's Harry Watson for second overall in goals with 26. Toronto's Wild Bill Ezenicki leads the NHL in penalty minutes with 145. Montreal boasts 3 players among the top 5 penalty minutes leaders: Murph Chamberlain with 111, Maurice Richard with 110, and Ken Reardon with 103. Much of Maurice Richard's penalty time comes from his personal feud with Rangers left winger Tony Leswick, the NHL's premier pest. Buddy O'Connor, the NHL's MVP, a year earlier, notches just 35 points in 46 games for the Rangers. After a 6-11-6 start, the Rangers dismiss coach Frank Boucher and hand the job to Lynn Patrick, but the club falls to 6th place with an 18-31-11 record. Boston meets Toronto in the first round of the playoffs, while Detroit takes on Montreal. The defending champion Leafs show their mettle, dispatching the Bruins in 5 games. Boston's only playoff win comes in Game 3 when Woody Dumart unlocks a 4-4 tie at 16-14 of overtime to beat Toronto. The war between Detroit and Montreal lasts 7 games. Game 1 stretches to triple OT before Max McNabb wins it for the Red Wings. During Game 1, Montreal's Elmer Locke is sidelined with a broken jaw after a run-in with Detroit's surly Blackjack Stewart. Montreal exacts a measure of revenge in Game 2 when tiny Gary Plamondon, an obscure winger, beats Harry Lumley in OT to give the Habs a 4-3 win. After taking the series lead with a 3-2 victory in Game 3, the Habs drop the next 2 by the same 3-1 score. Montreal takes Game 6 3-1, but the Red Wings, on home ice for Game 7, eke out a 3-1 victory of their own to advance to the Stanley Cup Finals. Toronto wins Game 1 of the Finals 3-2 as scrappy left winger Joe Kluke scores at 17:31 of the first extra session. Toronto's Turk Broda, one of the NHL's first recognized money goalies, allows 1 goal in each of the next 3 games of the Finals. Game 2 features a hat-trick from Maple Leafs winger Sid Smith as Toronto wins 3-1. Toronto burns Detroit with 3 second-period goals to again win 3-1. Cal Gardner scores the game-winning goal in Game 4 of the Finals as Toronto wins yet another 3-1 affair. The Leafs thus sweep the Red Wings for the Stanley Cup. Toronto becomes the first team to win 3 straight Stanley Cups since the Ottawa Silver 7 in 1902 to 1906. Gordie Howe is the leading playoff scorer, 8 goals, 3 assists for 11 points. Sid Abel captures his only Hart Trophy, edging Montreal's Bill Durnan. Bill Durnan cops his 5th Vezina Trophy in the last 6 years. Detroit defenseman Bill Quackenbush nabs the Lady Byng Trophy. In a dismal season of failure, the Rangers' lone bright spot is Finnish rookie Pentti Lund, who's voted game's outstanding freshman. Boston College wins the NCAA hockey crown, nipping Dartmouth 4-3 in the finals. Dartmouth goalie Dick Desmond is named the tournament's MVP. In 1948-49, Toronto manager Conn Smythe sent coach Hap Day to Montreal with instructions to obtain Maurice "Rocket" Richard's contract. Maple Leaf Gardens has never been close with the Buck, said Day, and I have explicit instructions to meet any price mentioned for Richard's services. Montreal manager Frank Selke, however, turned Day away. All the money in Toronto wouldn't buy him, said Selke. Having won 3 consecutive Stanley Cups, the Maple Leafs took aim at an unprecedented 4th straight title in 1949-50. Coach Hap Day and manager Conn Smythe detected 2 obstacles on the horizon. One was the rapidly improving Red Wings, and the other was complacency, which accompanies many championship teams. Conn was worried that the Leafs were becoming fat, both physically and mentally. Smythe's fears were confirmed early in the fall of 1949 when the Leafs opened their campaign with the vigor of a prickled balloon. Smythe studied his slumping club throughout November. Finally, on November 30th, Smythe began what became known as hockey's Battle of the Bulge. Although Smythe singled out only a few players for his blasts, the primary target of his ire was his longtime goaltender Walter "Turk" Broda. Smythe demanded that his players reduce their weight to specified limits. Broda, who weighed 197 pounds, was ordered to lop off 7. Smythe promptly called up reserve goalie Gil Mayer from the farm team in Pittsburgh. This was the supreme insult to Broda, who, except for a World War II stint in the service, had played virtually every game during his 12 seasons in Toronto. It was Tuesday, and Smythe was giving Turk until Saturday to fulfill the demand. After one day of severe dieting, Broda trimmed his weight from 197 to 193, but he couldn't get much lower than that. Then Smythe dropped another bomb. She sent 5 players in cash to Cleveland of the American Hockey League for tall 23-year-old goalie Al Rollins. It was clear that Rollins was a direct challenge to Broda and that Turk had better shape up pronto. With that in mind, a well-known nutritionist advised that the way to lose weight was by willpower. Overweight, he told the rotund goalie, is caused solely by eating more food than is needed. The climax of the week-long calorie crusade finally arrived on Saturday afternoon when one-on-one the penitent Leafs stepped on the scales under Smythe's watchful eye. Harry Watson, Garth Bosch, Vic Lynn, Sid Smith, and Howie Meeker all weighed in under the limit. Finally, it was Broda's turn. Turk moved forward and gingerly placed his feet on the platform. The numbers finally settled, just under 190 pounds. He had made the cut. If Turk was delighted, Smythe was doubly enthused because he regarded his goaltender with paternal affection. Broda and the Maple Leafs celebrated later that night with a 2-0 victory over the Rangers. The 35-year-old Broda went on to enjoy his best season in years, posting a 2.45 goals against average and a career-high 9 shutouts. But although Turk and the Leafs had won the Battle of the Bulge, they lost a much more important battle, their semi-final confrontation with the Detroit Red Wings. Despite Broda's trim 1.43 goals against average, Toronto lost to Detroit in 7 games. The Wings then knocked off New York in the finals and began to stake their claim as hockey's next dynasty. In a rule change, goaltenders will no longer have to face a penalty shot if they commit a major penalty. Instead, they will be represented in the penalty box by a teammate. The NHL season is expanded to 70 games. Future Philadelphia Flyers great Bobby Clarke is born August 13th, 1949 in Flin Flon, Manitoba. Detroit goes 37-19-14, beating out Montreal by 11 points. The Red Wings lead the NHL with 229 goals. The members of the powerful production line finish first, second, and third in the league in scoring. Detroit left winger Ted Lindsay leads the NHL in assists with 55 en route to his first and only scoring championship, 78 total points. Red Wings center Sid Abel is third in goals with 34, third in assists with 35, and second in total points with 69. Detroit's Gordie Howe is second in goals with 35 and third in points with 68. Maurice Richard is back atop the goal-scoring chart with 43 after a dismal 20-goal performance in the 48-49. He also finishes fourth in points with 65. Chicago's diminutive Metro Priestai leads the Hawks in goals with 29 and finishes fourth in the league. The Hawks second in goals with 203, but have the worst defense in the NHL. They give up 244 goals against. They finish last for the third time in 4 years. Despite their poor finish under the command of George Boucher, the Bruins boast the league's second best assist maker, Paul Ronti, with 36. Bill Durnan leads the league in goals against average 2.20 for the 6th time in the last 7 seasons. Harry Lumley matches the Red Wings' potent offense with sterling goaltending, finishing with the most wins, 33, and second-best goals against average, 2.35, earning 7 shutouts. Turk Broda overcomes a weight problem to hold on to his job in Toronto. He then leads the NHL in shutouts with 9 and finishes third in goals against average with 2.48. Under coach Lynn Patrick, the Rangers climb back into the playoffs with a 4th-place finish. Toronto's 3rd-place finishes fueled by Sid Smith with 45 points and Ted Kennedy with 44 points. The Wings and Maple Leafs meet in the first round of the playoffs. In Game 1, Gordie Howe misses a check on Ted Kennedy and crashes into the boards, fracturing his skull. Detroit and Toronto trade victories over the first 6 games as tensions run high. Game 4 goes in double overtime before Detroit's Leo Rice scores 38 seconds into the second extra period. Game 7 is tied 0-0 after regulation, but Detroit's Leo Rice pots his second OT winner of the series to send the Wings to the finals. In the other semifinal series, the Rangers ride the brilliant goaltending of Chuck Rayner to shock the Montreal Canadiens in 5 games. New York's 4-1 victory in Game 5 sends them to the finals. New York takes a 1-0 lead in Game 1 of the finals, but Detroit rallies with 4 unanswered goals and wins the game 4-1. Chuck Rayner holds the Wings' offense in check in Game 2, but Edgar Laprade scores twice for New York as the Rangers win 3-1. Detroit's strapping Doc Couture scores what proves to be the winner in Game 3 as Harry Lumley shuts out the Rangers 4-0. In Game 4 of the finals, New York's Don Raleigh scores a 34 in OT to break a 3-3 game. In Game 5, the Rangers play Detroit tightly and take a 1-1 game in overtime. Once more, it's Don Raleigh who wins it, giving New York the series edge. The Rangers score early in the 3rd period of Game 6 for a 4-3 lead, but they cannot hold off Detroit. Ted Lindsay and Sid Abel score to win it 5-4 and force a Game 7. Game 7 goes to the second overtime, tied 3-3. Detroit's Pete Babando winds up the hero as he beats goalie Chuck Rayner and wins the cup for the Wings. Gordie Howe, out of the hospital after suffering a fractured skull, joins his mates on the ice as Detroit hoists its 4th Stanley Cup. The Hart Trophy goes to Rangers goalie Chuck Rayner, who edges Toronto's Ted Kennedy. Edgar Laprade, the savvy Rangers center, wins his one and only Lady Byng Trophy. Bill Durden claims his 6th and final Vezina Trophy. Boston goalie Jack Gelino earns the Calder Trophy. Colorado College wins the NCAA title by walloping Boston University 13-4 in the finals. Boston goalie Ralph Bevins is named tourney MVP. The first intra-league draft is held on April 30th, 1950. Clubs are allowed to protect 30 players, with remaining players available for $25,000 each. In Game 1 of the 1950 semifinals between the Maple Leafs and the Red Wings, Detroit's Gordie Howe suffered a serious injury when he collided with Toronto's Ted Kennedy and hit his head on the boards. The talented right winger underwent a series of delicate brain operations and hovered near death for 2 days. Howe made a remarkable recovery, as did his teammates. They won Game 7 1-0 on an overtime goal by Leo Rice. One of the most intense competitors to play any sport, Rocket Richard led the NHL in goals for the 3rd time in his career during the 49-50 season, drilling home 43 goals in 70 games for the Canadiens. Many goaltenders have stated that the most frightening aspect of facing Richard was encountering the unrelenting fire in Rocket's eyes, a red glare that made him the NHL's most feared marksman. As the 1951 playoffs began, NHL fans envisioned a Stanley Cup final meeting between rivals Detroit and Toronto. After all, the Red Wings had become the first NHL team to ever reach 100 points with a record of 44, 13, and 13, while Conn Smythe's Leafs had finished just 6 points back. However, the Wings-Leafs matchup would never happen. Instead, Toronto and Montreal would hook up in the finals, a series that would become the most nail-biting of all time. Toronto reached the finals by dusting off the Bruins in the semis, while Montreal made it by stunning the Wings in their playoff matchup. Rocket Richard was the hero as he scored in quadruple overtime of Game 1 and triple overtime in Game 2. The Canadiens, who finished 25, 30, and 15 during the regular season, seemingly needed another dose of luck to beat the Leafs. As the finals unfolded, however, Smythe was the one who had the Leprechauns on his side. The series opened at Maple Leaf Gardens in Game 1, entered overtime tied 2-2 at 5:51 of the extra session. Toronto's Sid Smith beat goalie Jerry McNeil to give the Leafs a one-game edge. It was, wrote Jim Villepond of the Toronto Globe and Mail, as fast and exciting a hockey game as has been seen here this season. Game 2 also went into overtime tied 2-2, but this time Richard emerged as the hero as he beat Turk Broda at 2:55. In the third game, the Rocket put Montreal into the lead, only to have Smith tie the score at 1-1. For the third straight game, the clubs went in overtime, although this time there was one difference. Toronto coach Joe Primeau had benched Broda in favor of the younger Al Rollins. The move paid off handsomely. 3 times within the first 4 minutes of overtime, the Canadians pierced the Toronto defense, and each time, Rollins was equal to the occasion. Finally, Toronto's Todd Sloan slipped a pass to Ted Kennedy, who beat McNeil at 4:47. Never in Stanley Cup history had there been 4 consecutive overtime games, but that record was about to be broken at the Montreal Forum. A goal by the Canadians' Elmer Locke tied the game at 2-2, setting up the record-breaking extra session. At 5:15, Toronto's Harry Watson found the net to give the Leafs their third sudden death victory. It seemed impossible that 5 straight games of the Cup Finals would enter OT, and with the Habs nursing a 2-1 lead late in the game, it appeared Montreal would break the spell. However, Max Bentley, playing the most intense hockey of his life, set up Sloan with 32 seconds remaining, assuring a 5th straight overtime. Like all the overtimes, this one ended quickly as the Leafs' Bill Barilko scored a 2:53 of the extra session to end the all-overtime series. As one can imagine, bedlam reigned in the Maple Leaf dressing room. "We just out-Irished them," said a beaming Smythe, who was holding a telegram of the congratulations from a Father H. Murphy. "See what I mean?" he added. "Pure Irish luck." The NHL rules that each team must provide an emergency goaltender for every game for use by either team in case of injury or illness. The Hall of Fame inducts 9 new members, among them Newsy Lalonde and Joe Malone, bringing the number of inductees to 35. Before the season begins, Detroit trades Harry Lumley, Al Dewsbury, Don Morrison, and Pete Babando to Chicago. Chicago sends Gay Stewart, Metro Prestai, and Jim Henry to Detroit. Jim Henry doesn't play a single game for the Wings as Terry Sawchuk, a sensational 21-year-old rookie, becomes Detroit's regular goalie. In Toronto, another goalie prospect makes headlines as Al Rollins usurps Turk Broda as the Leafs' #1 puck stopper. In Montreal, goalie Jerry McNeil takes over after the retirement of legend Bill Durnan. NHL President Clarence Campbell fines Maurice Richard $500 for attacking referee Hugh McLean in a New York hotel lobby. The Red Wings win the regular season title. They go 44-13-13 and beat out Toronto by 6 points. Gordie Howe, fully recovered from his fractured skull, captured the NHL's Triple Crown. He leads the league in goals with 43, assists with 43, and total points a record 86. Montreal's Rocket Richard finishes with 42 goals, one shy of Gordie Howe's league-high mark, but is 20 points behind as the runner-up for total points. Toronto's Todd Sloan with 31 and Sid Smith with 30 are a distant 3rd and 4th in the goal-scoring race. Ted Kennedy with 43 ties Gordie Howe's assist mark, while Maple Leaf mate Max Bentley, 41, gives Toronto 2 of the 3 best assist men. Sid Abel, the centerman on the famed production line, ties Milt Schmidt and Ted Kennedy for 4th place in total points with 61. Toronto's new goalie Al Rollins leads the NHL in goals against average 1.77. Terry Sawchuk leads the league in wins with 44 and has a 1.99 goals against average. Ted Lindsay is fined $300 and suspended 3 games for a stick fight with Boston's Bill Ezenicki. The Red Wings' Red Kelly leads all NHL Blue Liners with 54 points, 3 shy of Babe Pratt's league record for a defenseman. The playoffs pit Detroit against Montreal and Toronto against Boston. The Leafs outscore the Bruins 17-5 and take the semifinal series 4-1. Game 2 of the semis is suspended because of a local Toronto curfew, and the game is declared a tie. However, Toronto reels off 4 straight wins, holding the Bruins to just 2 games. In a stunning upset, the 3rd-place Montreal Canadiens skate past Detroit in 6 semifinal games. Game 1 of the semis is tied 2-2 until Montreal's Maurice Richard beats Terry Sawchuk at 109 of the 4th overtime. Game 2 is scoreless through 5 full periods as Terry Sawchuk and Jerry McNeil put on a goaltending clinic, but Maurice Richard again nets the winner, this time 2:20 into triple overtime. Detroit bounces back with a pair of wins in Montreal, 2-0 in Game 3 and 4-1 in Game 4. The Habs play Road Warriors at Olympia Stadium in Detroit, beating the Red Wings 5-2 in Game 5. On home ice, Montreal completes the unlikely upset, tipping the powerful Wings 3-2 to advance to the Stanley Cup Finals. The finals between Canada's 2 rivals, Montreal and Toronto, feature 5 overtime games in a row. Toronto wins Game 1 3-2 when Sid Smith scores at 5:51 of overtime. Montreal wins Game 2 3-2 as Maurice Richard collects his 3rd overtime winner of the playoffs, beating Turk Broda at 2:55 of overtime. Toronto's Ted Kennedy beats Jerry McNeil at 4:47 of overtime to win Game 3 2-1. The Leafs' Harry Watson scores in Game 4 at 5:15 of overtime, giving Toronto a 3-2 victory. The Habs hold a 2-1 lead late in the third period of Game 5 when Toronto's Todd Sloan scores to tie it up with 32 seconds left on the clock. Leafs defenseman Bill Barilko scores at 2:53 of overtime in Game 5. The goal ends the all-overtime finals and gives Toronto the cup. Boston's Milt Schmidt with 61 points is awarded the Hart Trophy. Detroit's Red Kelly captures his first of 4 Lady Byng trophies. Toronto rookie Al Rollins wins the Vezina Trophy, but Detroit goalie Terry Sawchuk captures the Calder. The cup-winning goal is the last ever scored by Bill Barilko as he dies shortly after the playoffs in an airplane crash at the age of 24. Michigan wins its second NCAA hockey championship with a 7-1 rout of Brown. Still, Brown goalie Ed Whitson is named tournament MVP. The Detroit Red Wings had a rich minor league system. One of their greatest prospects was goaltender Terry Sawchuk, who had already captured the Rookie of the Year award in the AHL and the USHL. In 1950-51, he was ready for prime time, and he completed the Triple Crown by winning the Calder Trophy as the NHL's best freshman. Sawchuk won an NHL record 44 games in his rookie season while compiling 11 shutouts and a 1.99 goals against average. After suffering a serious head injury during the 1950 playoffs, Gordie Howe wore a helmet for part of the 1950-51 campaign, making him one of the few NHL players to wear the head protection during the season. The helmet seemed to give Howe added confidence, and he rebounded to lead the NHL in goals with 43, assists with 43, and points with 86. The Saskatchewan native won the first of his 4 straight Art Ross trophies. NHL on-ice official Hugh McLean aroused the temper of Maurice Richard during a Montreal-Boston matchup in 1950-51. McLean failed to call a penalty late in the game on a play where the Rocket was tripped and cut. Richard ran into McLean the following morning in a hotel lobby, grabbed the arbitrator by the tie, and threatened to punch him before cooler head prevailed. Richard was fined $500, and McLean never refereed in the NHL again. In 1950-51, the Maple Leafs promoted a young goaltender named Al Rollins from their USHL farm team in Kansas City to share goaltending duties with incumbent Turk Broda. Rollins went on to post a league-leading 1.77 goals against average, the best mark between 1940 and 1972, and earned the Vezina Trophy. The Leafs' unique tandem of Rollins and Broda was the first 2-goaltender system to be implemented in the NHL. Ever since they lost an inordinate number of stars to the war effort in 1942, the Rangers wallowed in a funk they couldn't escape. In a publicity stunt in 1950, the team hired Dr. David Tracy to hypnotize the players into playing better. Unfortunately, the Blue Shirts finished 20, 29, and 21 in 1950-51 and wouldn't reach the 500 mark again until 55-56. Ever since the Red Wings' 1950 Stanley Cup win, the Motor City Six ranked as the NHL's premier team. Their power extended from goal with Terry Sawchuk to defense with Red Kelly to offense, where a remarkable trio propelled Jack Adams' club to new heights. The production line, comprised of right wing Gordie Howe, left wing Ted Lindsay, and center Sid Abel, tormented foes with an assortment of weaponry. Abel had the savvy, while Lindsay and Howe blended style and aggression that intimidated their opponents. The result was 4 straight first-place finishes from 48-49 through 51-52. Abel, a Red Wing since 1938, captured the Hart Trophy in 1949. Although he never won a scoring title, Abel garnered 34 goals in 49-50, third in the league. Among Sid's many assets were a mean streak and the strength with which to back it up. Lindsay's blazing competitive spirit made him one of the toughest and most feared skaters in the NHL. Ted accumulated over 760 stitches on his person, all mementos from the various battles he waged on the ice. The stitches earned him the moniker Scarface, although he was also known as Terrible Ted and Tempestuous Ted. Ted was a little guy, 5'8", 163 pounds, and he resented players who thought they could take advantage of his small stature. He would not be intimidated. Okay, so I was cocky, he admitted. I had the idea that I had to beat up everyone in the league, and I'm still not convinced it wasn't a good idea. Probably I'd do it the same way if I did it all over again. That's just the way I am. The most gifted of the trio was Howe, who possessed extraordinary strength in a body that measured 6'1", 200 pounds. Howe's armament was the most formidable the game has known. His shot was uncanny, said goalie Glenn Hall, because it would come at the net in so many different ways. Unique among superstars, Howe was an ambidextrous stick handler. He could deliver remarkably accurate shot, so fluid, motion that goalies frequently failed to see the puck leave Gordy's stick. The production line reached its peak in 51-52 when the Wings finished 44-14-12. Howe led all the league in both goals, 47, and points, 86, and captured his first of 6 Hart trophies. Lindsay finished second in the league in scoring with 69 points. In the playoffs, the Red Wings steamrolled over the defending champion Maple Leafs, flattening them in 4 straight games. The Richard-led Canadiens were expected to provide an obstacle in the finals, but the power of the production line, as well as the stellar net-minding of Sawchuk, overwhelmed the Habs. Detroit broomed Montreal in 4, giving the Wings an 8-0 playoff record. The original production line ended that spring as the aging Abel was sold off in the offseason to the Chicago Blackhawks. However, talented Alex Del Vecchio took over Abel's spot in 52-53, and the new production line continued on as strong as ever. The NHL rules that visiting teams will wear basic white jerseys during games, while the home teams will wear colored jerseys. The goal crease enlarged from 3x7 to 4x8, and the face-off circles are expanded from a 10-foot radius to a 15-foot radius. Future Canadian star Guy Lafleur is born on September 20th, 1951 in Thurso, Quebec. The Red Wings post the best record in the NHL for the 4th straight year, 44-14-12. They finished 22 points ahead of second-place Montreal. Detroit scores the most goals in the NHL with 215 and yields the fewest with 133. Detroit's Gordie Howe wins the second straight scoring title with 86 points. His 47 goals are 16 more than runner-up Bill Mosienko of Chicago. Montreal's Elmer Locke rebounds from a poor season and leads the NHL in assists with 50. The feud between Gordie Howe and Maurice Richard is suspended as Richard suffers through an injury-plagued season. Detroit's Ted Lindsay is second in the NHL in points with 69. Don Raleigh, the Rangers' slick center, is second in the NHL in assists with 42 and 4th overall in points with 61. On March 23, 1952, Chicago's Bill Mosienko sets an NHL record by scoring 3 goals in 21 seconds at 6:09, 6:20, and 6:30 of the third period as Chicago beats New York 7-6. In Montreal, a hard-shooting right winger named Bernie Geoffrion rips 30 goals, tied for third in the league in his first full season. Maurice Richard misses 22 games and still ties Toronto's Sid Smith for 5th in goals with 27. The Rangers, who replaced coach Neil Colville with Bill Cook, introduce rookie right winger Wally Hergesheimer. He nets 26 goals. The 4th place Bruins are paced by scoring of Milt Schmidt and Johnny Pearson, 50 points each. Boston replaces Jack Gelano in goal with Sugar Jim Henry, back in the NHL after a 2-year hiatus. Terry Sawchuk, Detroit's superb netminder, wins 44 games for the second year in a row, records the NHL's best goals against average, 1.90. Toronto goalie Turk Broda plays only 1 game in his last season. Al Rollins plays full-time. The playoffs feature Detroit versus Toronto and Montreal versus Boston. Montreal and Boston engage in a war of wills as the Habs outscore Boston 9-1 in the first 2 games before the Bruins win the next 3. Game 6 of the semis goes to double OT before Montreal's Paul Maznik beats Jim Henry. Game 7 in Montreal starts badly for the Habs as Maurice Richard is knocked unconscious in the first period by a collision. Maurice Richard, still dazed from his earlier injury, breaks a 1-1 tie late in Game 7. He skates the puck through the entire Bruins team and scores one of the most famous playoff goals ever. In the other semifinal, Detroit sweeps Toronto in 4 games. The Wings have 9 days off to rest up for their finals meeting with Montreal. Detroit romps over the battered Canadiens in the finals, sweeping Montreal in 4 games. Detroit goalie Terry Sawchuk allows just 2 goals in the entire series. The Wings take Game 1 3-1. Ted Lindsay records the game winner in Game 2 as Detroit prevails 2-1. In Game 3 of the finals, Gordie Howe's first period goal is all goalie Terry Sawchuk needs as the Red Wings win 3-0. Detroit's Metro Presti scores twice in Game 4 as Sawchuk blanks the Habs again 3-0 after going 8-0 in the playoffs. The Wings skate off with the Stanley Cup. Terry Sawchuk ends the playoffs with 4 shutouts and an unheard-of goals against average 0.63. The Vezina Trophy goes to Terry Sawchuk, who helped his cause with 12 regular season shutouts. Al Rollins is runner-up. Gordie Howe captures his first of 6 Hart trophies. Elmer Locke is runner-up. Toronto's Sid Smith is awarded the Lady Byng Trophy. Bernie Geoffrion is awarded the Calder Trophy. Canada wins the Olympic hockey gold medal, while the United States takes the silver. Michigan wins its second straight NCAA hockey title, 4-1 win over Colorado College. Nevertheless, Colorado goalie Ken Kinsley is named tournament MVP. After a regular season in which he led all goaltenders in virtually every statistical category, Terry Sawchuk continued to amaze right through the 1953 postseason. The Red Wings won 8 consecutive games in the playoffs and did not allow a single goal on home ice. Sawchuk registered 8 wins, 4 shutouts, and a goals against average of 0.63 as Detroit motored past Toronto and Montreal to take the cup. The 1951-52 season saw the arrival of a new star in Montreal. Bernie Boom Boom Geoffrion captured the Calder Trophy with 30 goals and 54 points. Geoffrion introduced a new offensive weapon that earned him his unique nickname. Many laughed at his new slap shot until he began slapping pucks over, under, and through enemy goaltenders. Geoffrion's new way of firing the puck soon became standard practice around the league. The Edmonton Mercuries presented Canada at the 1952 Olympic Games in Oslo, Norway. The team of amateurs blazed through the Olympic tournament by going undefeated in 8 games. The only blemish being a 3-3 tie with the United States. The team remained in Europe after the Olympics and completed a series of 50 exhibition games against European squads. The Canadian team was a victorious 45 out of those 50 games. In April of 1953, the Red Wings fully expected to extend their 8-game playoff winning streak, which they orchestrated a year before. The Detroiters not only had the most superstars, Gordie Howe, Ted Lindsay, Terry Sawchuk, but their second liners were equally superb. Marty Pavelich and Glenn Skov ranked among the all-time best defensive forwards, while Marcel Pronovost and Bob Goldham rated among the NHL's best blue liners. Then there was Red Kelly, the game's #1 defenseman and winner of the year's Lady Byng Trophy for clean play and competence. Nobody came close to Detroit in the regular season race, which deflected attention toward a race of another kind. Howe took dead aim at Maurice Richard's record of 50 goals in the season, and though Howe fell just short, he still led the league in goals with 49, assists with 46, and points, a new record 95, thus capturing his second career Triple Crown. Detroit's playoff opponent, Boston, seemed like easy fodder. The Bruins plugged their net with goalie Jim Henry, who was considered too old to stop Detroit. Boston's defense was mediocre, and its famous forwards Milt Schmidt and Woody Dumars were well past their prime. Everyone expected an easy Detroit win, said Rangers manager Frank Boucher, maybe even a 4-game sweep. The opening game reinforced Boucher's point. Playing before their home crowd at Olympia Stadium, the Red Wings trashed Boston 7-0. But in the second game, the Bruins thoroughly outskated and outshot the Red Wings. The Eddie Sanford, Fleming, McKell, Johnny Pearson line began clicking, and Detroit's production line was thoroughly nullified by Schmidt, Dumars, and Joe Cloquet. Boston won 5-3. The third contest, played at Boston Garden, was tied 1-1 after 3 periods. When the overtime began, the teams warily pawed at each other, accenting defense. Boston was using 2 rookie defensemen, Bob Armstrong and Warren Godfrey, but they played flawlessly. If the Bruins were to win, though, they had to beat Sawchuk, and the word was he could be beaten most easily by a high shot. In the 12th minute of overtime, winger Jack McIntyre went into orbit for the Bruins. He hurled over the Detroit blue line and flicked his wrist. The puck took off like a jet, leaving the runway and eluded the transfixed Sawchuk at 12:29. Game 4 was played on Howe's birthday, but the Bruins were the ones who did the celebrating. Dumars shadowed Howe with unaccustomed efficiency, and Boston ran off with a 6-2 win. The Wings finally broke free in Game 5 with a 6-4 victory at home, but the Bruins earned their way into the finals by winning Game 6 4-2 at Boston Garden. The upset-minded Bruins took aim at Montreal in the finals, but the Canadians emerged victorious, taking the decisive Game 5 1-0 on an overtime goal by Elmer Locke. As for the Wings, they'd be back on top in 53-54, and this time, they wouldn't be denied. I'm Charlie Saunier from the Renegades of Puck, and this has been the 20th Century Hockey Chronicle. If you'd like to support more projects like this, please follow the Renegades of Puck on all social media platforms and also visit renegadesofpuck.com.